Hey, welcome to the Bryan Marshall podcast. But here's the deal. Tonight's a little different. We got the bikers in the room tonight, and we're going to have fun talking to them. So you all be good. Come to the show. Check this thing out with the bikers.
Yo.
So anyway, Rufus,
Yeah.
we're glad to have you here, buddy. And
You know, first thing you do is say, hey, look, don't be nervous. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Already.
well,
that
I said,
ship
no,
is
here's what I
sailed.
said. I didn't say don't. I said you're not allowed to be nervous. There's a difference.
Oh, there you go. Laying
And-
down the rules.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. You
nervous
know,
police.
you want to know the funny part? I always try to say, you got to tell the story how we met.
Oh.
You know what I don't know?
that was
Rufus,
on
you
the
know what
last
I
year
don't
of
know?
my 5-year stint, I guess.
You know what I don't know? I don't know your last name.
I guess I better give it out here.
Rufus.
Hardeman,
Hardeman.
Hardeman.
All right.
Long line of Hardemans out of Dallas and then Texas. Ain't no Hardemans up in Indiana, not to mention.
Well, there's one. That's you.
Yeah.
Well, from what I
So-
hear, that explains your personality. If the rest of you are down in Texas,
Yeah, I guess, some of us
It
had
should
to
just
flee.
be hyphenated like hard man
yeah.
instead of hard
Yeah,
dumb man.
down in Dallas, they're known for their barbecue. So there's about 5 or 6 greasy spoons down there in Dallas. I mean, they're good barbecue. And my
Called
grandfather
Hardeman
was the
Barbecue?
one that started that. Oh, by the way, I got a website for my family. I guess I'll plug it right here, hardeman.org. Believe it or not, I bought that that domain about 25 years ago.
And what does it do? What does it get you
It
to?
just I put a lot of stuff about our lineage. I got pictures, I got videos on it,
Okay.
so
So if they want to know more about you, if they can't remember your last name, you go right to hardeman.org.
yeah, that's true. If you can remember how to spell it.
Oh, okay.
There's a Hardeman County in Texas, which is kind of funny because the name is, I don't think the most common name. If you heard Jones or Smith County or something like that, but there actually is a Hardeman County. And it's funny how my relatives down there, I'm not from Texas, but my father was from Texas. So we used to go down and visit, because his mother and father lived down in Austin. So we'd go down there probably every Christmas for a whole bunch of years. But when I mention things like that, it's funny how they don't even know it. But through my research, I said, Hardeman, because when I was trying to get the domain, it was already taken.
Okay.
So it was hardeman.com because there's a Hardeman County. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. There's a Hardeman County. I hope that one day whenever I do retire, that I'll take some time to, kind of look into what the genesis of Hardeman County is. Because I don't know what it's got to do with us, Yeah, I'm down the road here. Okay, we talked about Santa Shaft.
No, here's what we said so that everybody that watches this can catch up, because we had Santa on last week.
Yeah.
And I said to you, hey, man, welcome to Louisville on a snowy night. And Ryan said, well, it was a nice night. It was snowing last week, and we had Santa on. And I said,
And that's
you
how
should have been here when we had Santa on. And you said,
Okay, say it again. No, I'm just kidding.
you said,
No, I said that when my kids were real young, I don't know where I was kind of goofy with those little guys. It's a wonder they got any respect for me today. But I guess we watched Shaft the movie, which they probably were too young to be watching that. But and then I don't know, we were probably at a buffet somewhere, and I was just thinking about, what would be neat if in the hood we developed this character call him Santa Shaft.
Yeah.
And of course, Santa Shaft would be driving the Eldorado, and he'd have all the gifts in the back.
Oh,
and
man.
the kids just took to it like, yeah, Dad, that'd be a great idea. And I'm like, yeah, and he'd be like, who's the cat that you can't count out when there's danger all about? Well, that's part of the Shaft. And so now we incorporate some of the music for that for Santa.
Who's the
And he'd
one
have
that's Shaft, that's who.
He'd be in a leather jacket with white, instead of a red jacket, he'd have on a little
Purple
leather
or something.
jacket. I mean, the whole thing was stupid.
Purple with green
it was
pants.
really stupid.
and then about,
No, it's cool.
got the
It's
Mr.
cool.
the Mr. T starter kit on that says big S on it. Like,
Can you-
right? Say,
Was that
Mr.
the writer that did wrote the soundtrack for Shaft? What was Isaac Hayes?
oh yeah.
Can you imagine Isaac Hayes with leather jacket on and a little red hat, driving an Eldorado.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, if there's a generation out there that doesn't know who Shaft is,
Oh yeah,
Look
That's
up
right.
Shaft.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, if you don't know Shaft, and if you don't know that,
the
that
sequel.
sound is cool too. That song. Who's the one?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to.
I used to do that to him all the
Shaft,
time.
that's who. Yeah.
I don't know what it
Yeah,
was.
that voice to
We,
Shaft.
I mean, the Shaft was a huge deal at a certain point, wasn't
Who
it?
was that now?
Shaft. The
Richard
film.
Roundtree. That was a cutting edge. What they call it, black exploitation movies. And I think
Yeah.
one of the guys, there was an actor, I can't remember his name now. He said, "Yeah, we were exploited all the way to the bank where I was cashing my check." I was like, okay.
I mean, they
but-
can exploit me any day, right?
But somebody,
I'm thinking like, how much would it hurt to have Mike Tyson hit me in the face for
Yeah.
$30 million? Would you do it?
the old
More?
Mike, the old
Mike?
Mike,
No, not. I mean, well, even the new Mike
Well,
for that matter.
the old Mike, I could probably do it.
You could.
For the right amount of money, you'd be surprised how much abuse I'll take for the right amount of money.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
But
hell, I've been beat
the
to
young
death.
Mike,
I've been beat to death for a lot less, but
the young Mike, no, because I wouldn't be able to collect the money. I'd be dead.
that's right.
Yeah.
That is true. Yeah.
You know, my kids could, but I'm ready to die for them that
I know.
way
He's-
back. You know, so
I'm just a fan of his. You know, Mike. I mean, he is just such a. That guy is. He's got a lot of style. That guy,
special.
as does Rufus. There's Rufus.
know,
Rufus, I'm a fan. but
Mike
we-
is real. I don't know about style. Maybe he got style, but he's just real. He's
is.
real. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Guy's real.
I saw him on a podcast where he's talking to who's the mafia guy that's got the show on now.
Oh, I can't remember his name
You
either.
know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Anyway,
Real Live Mafia. Like he
yeah,
was.
real live mafia, and he God, and I like it really well too. He's got a wine out, and I mean, he's found God, and he's become a Christian guy, and hopefully he has. So,
Well,
and
I know some
anyway,
real-
Mike was on that. So the point of all that is, Mike was on the show, on his show, and Michael Francis is the mafia guy, Michael Francis.
okay.
And Mike Tyson was on his show, and they were just. Mike was like, "Hey man, you know, you got to talk like this when you're talking about Mike, but because he ain't here to beat me to death." But
I use science.
he's talking like he said, "Well, like what's it like to be in the mafia?" And it's like, and anyway, it was. I found him charming and fun, and it was he was just.
Well, he's real, and I enjoy him. You know, and I think he got paid the other night.
Yeah.
I don't think that was a real fight in a way. I mean, it was real. I tell you what, if the guy opened up one time, Mike would have took a shot at him.
Yeah, right.
He was hunting him. I don't know if
He
you can
would
tell.
have. See,
he was hunting him.
That's
I
what
was-
people discount, I think.
I was.
I think people discount that. If he'd have opened up,
Oh, he would have hit
Michael-
him. Oh, he was
he
really
would have
he was
taken it.
hunting him.
Yeah.
He was and Mike wasn't backing up. He was coming. He was just
No.
like, just give me one shot,
Yeah.
and he would have knocked him square out. I'm sorry.
oof. And we're in Louisville, Kentucky, the home of Muhammad Ali. So
Yes, that's right.
we're standing up for Mike
He's
Tyson here.
buried right up the road there.
You know, his name was Cassius Clay,
Cassius Clay.
and he's changed it because he went to Muslim. Okay, I can't remember what they call it, Nation of Islam. Okay,
Yes.
but Cassius, he was named after a actual abolitionist.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
he was named after an abolitionist, and the guy, I don't know I know his name was Cassius, and the guy had his father, the man that he was named after, his father was a slave owner, as I understand it, but he was so appalled by the slavery, this Cassius character, that he rebelled against his family and whatnot. And it's kind of funny because, you know, he became Muhammad Ali, which is fine. I mean, you know, just like Abdul-Jabbar. But in this case, the name of Cassius was really about a guy that was trying to free basically black slaves.
Okay.
But I would imagine there's a lot of people who haven't heard that story, and they're like, yeah, he named it Cassius, and he got rid of that slave name, and now he's got this, you know, this name of a Muslim name, which
Yeah.
is supposedly better than what he had. And I'm thinking, you can't be the name of a guy that was trying to free people.
Yeah.
Right.
Just happened to be white, but you know.
If I may,
Yeah.
I want to jump into the subject, and I didn't even know whether to bring it up or not, but I'm going to wait a second. I'm going to interrupt myself. Tell them how we met real quick. We started into that, and then we stopped.
My memory's pretty poor at this point. I know You have, I guess I could mention your location down in Jeffersonville.
My shop.
And
We talked about everybody talks about my shop. That's
and
how
I was
that's
down there,
how we met.
and a lady friend of mine, she's there shopping in the cat store, as she calls it. I guess
Yes.
it's something.
I put them in business.
you
The
do
Animal
that?
Protection Association, and they raise money by having a thrift store with all donations, and they sell that, and that's how they make their money. And
So I was walking down, I guess, what street is that? That's east-west?
Spring Street.
Spring Street.
The main-
Sorry, I go down.
There used to be hot springs in Jeffersonville, and the river boats would park there. You go up the hill, and you go up Spring Street and sit in hot springs, and that
Yeah.
was the big
Cool.
thing to do.
As I recall,
Jeffersonville,
you
yeah.
were in your area back there in the back, or to the side, or to the
On
the
Market
east,
Street,
on
yes.
Market Street, and you were in there working, and you had seemed like you were selling different things. You had paintings there. I was walking my dog, I believe. I have a
Yes, I babysat him one time.
Yeah.
I said, go ahead to lunch. I'll watch it. What's his name?
Clyde.
Clyde.
Yeah, Clyde
He's
is
the coolest little. He sat there like, and he's looking at me like, man, I don't even know if I want to come in there. He's like, this place it looks. Is there a clean place? The dog's looking around like, is there a clean place I can sit down? And the answer is,
Cameron, can you get us a picture of Clyde?
yeah. Clyde is hip, cool, buddy. Clyde. We'll make
there
that
we go.
happen. We'll make that happen. Picture of Clyde.
Yeah, he's on my Facebook, so I'm not sure, but
Okay, we'll get it. But anyway, so many people. I'm telling. If I got the door up, because it's kind of there's always a lot.
yeah, it was kind of warm.
But there's a lot of action around there, and this is probably the first time he's ever seen me that I didn't have, like shorts on. My knees were dirty because I'm working on a car or
You're
something.
always doing something down there.
And dirty is like I've been in the mines all day long, trying to work on all my car projects or art. I'm slinging paint. It's
Well, I knew I was at home when I saw you, so
there you
like-
go.
'cause
So
you-
we pulled up two metal chairs and started talking.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It
and-
was, what did the guy said? I've never met a stranger. That was the writer that wrote that. I wish I had the memory I had about 10 or 15 years ago. But you get to talking to people, and you find common ground, and it found out that we had a lot in common, or at least, let me put it another way. I think our perspectives were similar to a point where I could add to what you were saying, you could add to what I was saying. So that's how I recall the
That's
first
true.
encounter. I was like, okay, yeah, well, I was also, I'm like, well, that's what I think. And it was like, yeah, well, you
had
might
the
be my
most-
brother. I didn't
Yeah.
know my dad had any kids
Yes,
down here.
I know. You had the most interesting. But you were going to ask a question, I think, and I didn't want to interrupt you.
It wasn't a question. It was just a comment. We're so lucky to live here in Louisville. We're actually part of the Underground Railroad. There's a Methodist church on the Indiana side of the Ohio River, which is like, 2 miles from here. And they used to leave a light hung in the window when there was no one around, and when people escaping slavery could cross the Ohio River. And it's still there. You can go and see it.
My house that I just restored in Charlestown, Indiana, it's 200 years old, and 3 boys were raised there. All 3 were killed in the Civil War fighting. But that was part of the Underground Railroad, and they say that my house somewhere there has a tunnel that goes all the way like catty corner to down the street where they could move people from house to house. But that somewhere there's a tunnel between my house and another house in the neighborhood. It's a bunch of old homes, and I don't live there. I just restored the house it's for sale right now.
That was based on the name of Cassius. Cassius
Okay,
Clay,
all
Muhammad
right.
Ali. Yeah.
But it's funny. History is going to be what it is, and to try to get rid of it, or to try to manipulate it in a way that you want it to be presented. History should be just what it is. I went down to Nashville and ended up in a town south of Nashville called Franklin, Tennessee. And I don't know, it's probably not there now, but this is about. I even got it in my phone here actually. But they have I don't want to say monument, but like how you're in downtown square, and
Right.
there's like a circle around it. I guess you can say it's monument statues. And one of the things that they had a display, and actually had some original information about slavery, of what how much a slave costs and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this, and I'm just reading it because it's curious to me. I've never been a slave, so this is interesting information. In fact, nobody in my family's ever been a slave. As far as you'd have to go back generations of people that I never met, but it's all good. But the idea that there were people, I could feel them looking at me like, like, oh, we're just, white people. I would have to qualify that, clarify it. Like, boy, we're just so ashamed of this whole, because they just looked at me like, wish this wasn't here. And I'm just like, myself is, okay, I just want to know what happened, and they said how much they just had different articles in this, they had preserved this paper and laminated it under plastic or something. And they're just talking about, let's say an auction where they were auctioning. And then see, that don't offend me because I wasn't auctioned. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not.
You're about, if I may interrupt you, you're about to segue into. I'm going to go back because I said you got to come on this show, and here's why. Because when I met you, he has somehow I said, Rufus, I don't know how you've done this, and I don't know how I can ask this or say this. Maybe it's a rhetorical question, but race is absolutely, if I may say, if I'm not putting words here, like unimportant to you. Unimportant.
It's
insignificant. Can I say that? It may be a fact that we're not the same race, but it does not.
I'm a person of, let's say, African heritage, but I'm a person that happens to be black.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm
define
proud of
you.
being. I mean, what I am. What I tell you, what I am proud of. I don't know if you get, when you say you're proud of a color, then you have to kind of ask people, are you proud to be white? Mm-hmm.
What else?
It doesn't make any sense.
Right. No. What else can I be?
Yeah, I mean, I am who I am. But I tell you, growing up, my father was really big. He was very powerful in my life. He was a hard case dude, too. But he was always talking about his family. Always. Hard him in this, hard him in that, hard him in this. So his pride wasn't so much, he never talked about, well, we got to embrace being, in those days we were colored, then later we were Negroes, whatever. He embraced the idea, hey, this is your family. This is where you come from. I mean, that's all he talked about. He wasn't nobody's Republican. He was nobody's Democrat. He was just a hardeman. That's how he went about his life. And he was always, he said, I got to live up to being a hardeman. That's what he always talked about. And it was funny, because it wasn't none of us up here, but except him and my mother. Well, of course, my mother was married into it, and my sister, so I didn't have a lot of examples. But we'd go down to Dallas, and they had different businesses down there. My cousin down there had a trucking company and actually had a skating rink. So my feeling was growing up, it wasn't. We of course watched, and we were involved, I guess, in some ways. The struggle that was going through the civil rights year. It's not like we were outside of it, but it wasn't the most prominent thing for us. It wasn't like, this is what we live for. We got to go this way.
Well, here's why I say that, because we've talked about that. I mean, the whole point of this show is to talk about passions that you have and things that are interesting to you.
Yeah.
Talk about, if I may jump through that. I mean, you rode a bicycle, and that's what, because we talked about, hey man, we're going to get with the bikers tonight, but you said you rode your bike from where to where?
Yeah, about when I turned 50, I don't know. I went through a little bit of change in life. Things were going on and whatnot. I don't know. I have a small business and all that. So you're always dealing with something. You already know that. And I just started riding my bicycle. And I always did ride when I grew up. I grew up kind of out in just outside of Fishers, Indiana. So in the summers, we rode a lot anyway. 3 or 4 miles, got to go to baseball practice. Anything you did, you didn't have helicopter parents. So you had to get there any way you could. Boy Scout meetings. I used to ride to Boy Scout meetings. It was 3 miles one way. I'd ride in the winter. It was 25 degrees, sometimes 18 degrees. I'd ride my bicycle to the Boy Scout meeting. So cycling was something I kind of did as a kid, and a lot of kids do that. Somehow or another, got to be about 50 years old, and I just got this thing where I thought, well, I'll start riding. A friend of mine had a bicycle. I used to ride on Saturdays. I'd ride 18 miles, and I'd come back and pat myself all over the back, and I weighed 230 pounds. And I said, well, look what I did. And then the more of it I did, and then somehow I got a little bit better bike, and next thing you know, I'm riding the Hilly 100, and, and like, boy, that almost killed me, and I figured, well, I'll get in better shape. And then a friend of mine started riding with me, and one day we're riding, and I see this shirt says Rain on the back, and it was colorful, Jersey. They call them kits.
Okay.
And but they're bicycle jerseys from my perspective. And it said rain on the back. And I was like, Dan, what's that all? My friend Dan that rode with me, I said, what's all that back? What's that rain mean? Did they ride in the rain? He says, no, that's right across Indiana.
Oh.
And I'd been riding for about 4 years at that point. And, you know, I was running around 18, 19, 20 miles an hour, which is pretty fast for cycling. And if you do that for 25 and 30 miles, you know, you're a pretty good cyclist if you can ride like that. So I hadn't got to where I start to feel my oats and thought, well, I'm a cyclist now. I said, Dan, why don't we do that? What's the worst thing I ever said? Because this is a guy.
He took you up on it.
He says, yeah, but we have to train. He was real solemn about it. I was like, I thought we were training, you know. And he says, no, we got to really train. So next thing I know, Dan said, you really want to do this? You know, we're going to train. So he called me up like Saturday morning and said, we got to ride 30 miles a day. And I was like, what? And he said, we got to train for the rain ride. So we started training in real earnest. And so I turned, I think, maybe 52 or so. I can't remember exactly. So we ride, we get in the car. I probably don't have time to explain all the details of it, but I'll just say we end up in Terre Haute, was where you start at.
This is Terre Haute, Indiana, which is the border.
Terre Haute, Indiana is where you start.
That's on the west side of Indiana.
Yeah. Yes, right near the border. And can't remember the name of that school, Saint something anyway. You think all those things.
Well, Indiana State is over there.
Yeah, but there's another Catholic school. It's a college, but I can't remember that.
Xavier?
No, it might be St. Mary's or something like that. But anyway, we all these cyclists, like 2,000 of us, and we start out we're coming into Terre Haute now because we're on the west side of Terre Haute, and then we ride through downtown Terre Haute, and then we ride through Terre Haute, and then we get on US 40, and then US 40 goes on across and.
Straight across, straight as an arrow, all the way across.
Except when you get to Plainfield, we go south to avoid the traffic you're going to have in downtown Indy, and we end up to Southport, the south side of Indianapolis, and then somewhere on the other side of Indianapolis, we go north again and go up to Greenfield, and then we're back on US 40 again.
Yes, all the way to Richmond, Indiana.
Well, the first time I did that, it's just hard. I mean, psychologically, a lot of things happen when you're doing something difficult like that.
How far?
It's 164 miles.
100. Wow.
So I got real tired, and then
long drive.
I was right on the berm of the road because I just didn't want to get hit by a car. I was just, and there's a lot of us out there, but I'm just riding real careful, and I mean, it's been a long time, and I got a succession of flats in the last 30 miles. And I tell you what, I got about 15 miles out, and I ran out of inner tubes because I had a piece of metal in the tire, and I was too stupid to figure out that I need to get it out before I put a new tube in there. And I ran out of CO2 cartridges is what you use to energize. So I had my hand pump. So I'm worn out, as you can imagine, 150 miles into this. And my phone's ringing, and I'm ready to throw it into the street because I don't want them to come get me. I got to finish this ride. Because I know they're at they're at Richmond at Earlham
College.
Yeah,
yes.
They're at Earlham, and they're like, where's
Quaker
Rufus?
College.
And I'm just like, man, I got to finish this. So I got to some place where it was like an antique place that was closed, or dry goods, whatever. It was antique store.
Antiques. Let's say I know 40 well. That would be Cambridge City.
Yeah. Exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And I was so tired, I just laid down on the sidewalk on the stoop there, and I was like, oh man, and I said, Lord, I'm gonna need your help. And I think a lot of times you pray, but when you don't really need much, it ain't the same as when you really need some help.
Right.
And I was like, I can't do this, and that prayer gave me the strength. I got up and I pumped that tire up, and I rode on in on half of a flat of a tire and got in. Okay, so then I was ashamed of myself that everybody else beat me in, so I had to do it next year.
And how many times did you do it?
I did it 9 times.
Wow.
And
wow.
And the last
that's 1,000 miles on a bicycle.
2 times I got in, and you got to get in before 9 in order for you to get your name on the register. And the next 8 times I got in before 9 o'clock. One time I got in at 7, and we start at 7. So it's at 12 hours. Most of the time it's 13 hours. But anyway.
Wow. Okay.
And you know what? This is my only point about it is when you do something, and you've done this, and you have too, and I'm talking about something that was really hard,
Yeah,
it changes you,
it does.
and it changed me. Now, it made me, it just changed me in so many ways. I became just a little different. I can't hardly explain
In
it.
a good way.
In a good way. It was just a little different. I didn't seem to feel like I had to go out and tell everybody I'm the guy in the room every time. It was like I'd done something that other people had done, but I was one of them now.
My sign up there, interviews about life's passions. And here's what I say. Things like that are the fuel for an interesting life. That's when I introduced the show, I said, we got to talk about people who don't sit around with their feet propped up. Not that it's bad to sit and watch a football game, but if you always say, tomorrow, I'll try to do that tomorrow.
Or I did that yesterday.
Isn't that right? And you
remember a guy named Bruce Williams used to have a talk show.
No.
He was on WIBC. This is for
I know WIBC.
Before talk radio got to be a real thing. It was back in the, I don't know, maybe in the 80s. But he said a friend of his wanted to go back to law school, and he was 45 years old. And his friends all told him and said, it's going to take you 3 years, and you'll be 48 years old when you get out. And he said, you know what? I got to thinking about it. In 3 years, I'll be 48 anyway.
That's it. That's true.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that as you go through life, that's kind of how you look at it. There's things that maybe you can't do, but you should never tell yourself you can't, or at least try not to. 2021, I rode across Iowa. Now, it wasn't as big a deal because it took us 7 days, but it was.
But we got to keep going here because we're gonna end up running out of time. Not only did you do that, but now you're talking about riding across the United States. Is that true?
That's Dan. Dan's crazy, and I should never mention that to him. But he's like, because what I told Dan I wanted to do. You have to meet Dan. He's rich.
We need crazy friends. We need crazy friends. We need
I said, Dan. I said, when we retire, because he works with me, and I said, why don't we go to every capital city in the United States? I've seen on the internet where guys mapped it out. You can do it in 8 days. He says, how about us just ride across the United States? And of course, we rode a lot together. And I said, Dan, and he's serious. He is very serious, and he says we can start.
We got to train.
Yeah, which I'm
no, we got to take.
Scared.
We got to take a train. That's what I say.
He's a guy that you don't want to ever tell anything like that. If you have an idea like that, don't tell him. Yeah. I said something about riding down the Wabash. It starts up around Huntington. We could kayak down there. I want him to say, no, that's crazy. But he's like, okay. So
that sounds like a good time. Let's do it.
Yeah, and I said, it's about 1,000 miles because it meanders. He's like, yeah, we could do that. And I'm like, Dan, you're supposed to say no. And he's like, no, I think we could do it. We just have to train for it. Then he starts making phone calls to people to see about how much it would cost us to get into kayaking. And I'm like, oh my God. So I hate the guy, but I love the guy. He's a good friend of mine. But yeah, we rode across Iowa. That was that's something. That's to behold. Right? That is such a popular ride that it's a lottery to get in it. You can't just sign up for it. Huh. It's like 25,000 people. I got it on my. I've got it on my
dollars there for me.
Yeah. No, in fact,
well, dang,
that's how we got in.
Who wins? Who gets?
We created a team called the Indy Cyclists because they'll take teams quicker than they'll take individuals, and we rented a motor home. So every day we rode about 80 miles a day, and wow. Some days it was 50, some days one day was 95, but it was hot as heck. Okay.
Yeah.
But that was the best idea we ever had, so we could come home every day. And then we got about that first day, and I mean, we looked at each other like, man, what have we bit off? About Wednesday, we started on Sunday. About Wednesday, we were good. And we rode that thing, we wore it out, and so that's something to be proud of.
And so he stopped by my shop because I've got car projects always.
Before you jump into that, I just have to say we need to monetize Dan. We need to rent Dan out at a really high rate, and we'll pay Dan a little something. Or we could all be the Dan in each other's lives, couldn't we?
Dan's crazy. Dan is on a plant-based diet. He's in great shape, and he's a year younger than me, but you wouldn't know it looking at him, and he's just really, he's just, I hate him.
Well, I tell you, I do too, and I don't even know him.
I don't even know him. Yeah.
But here's the thing: I looked at myself on the last podcast, and I'm like, they're like, "Well, Bryan, how'd you do on that?" I'm like, "Well, all right. I said, I look like I was in my fat Oprah phase. And so I'm
You
going
know,
to have
the
to.
television makes you look heavier, you know that.
Well, let me tell you,
It's the angle of the
it
camera.
exemplified it for me. So I'm like, I think I'll try to start losing weight. I'm going to start. It's like, look, watch Bryan. So I'm challenging myself. Watch Bryan reduce himself on this show. So there's my passion of I'm going to try to get in better shape, and so there.
Good job.
I'm
Good
gonna,
job.
you know,
And
I've
so
gained
tell
about 10
Dan to call
pounds.
me, but I ain't riding across Indiana. I might walk, but I don't want to ride.
Oh, he's serious a heart attack about riding across
but
the United
I might
States.
I might kayak.
And
that'd be fun.
going down the Wabash,
Yeah.
we thought about it. We really did look at that, and I'm not sure. You know, they got these snakefish, they jump over the boats and stuff, and it's a mess down there. And we got to looking at the point because we'd have to camp along the river.
Right.
It goes all the way to, you already know this, but it goes all the way down to the Ohio. Did I mention the fact I've been in every county?
You told me, but that's the thing. I'm trying to race because we'll be here, well, it's like 4:00 in the morning and we're still. Well, what about the cars? We never did get to talk about the cars.
Our producer will be asleep out there.
I know. He's like, dang, you guys are never going to wrap this up. But that's why I wanted you to come down so bad, because when we started talking in the shop, I mean, we go to the next subject and the next subject and the next subject, and his significant other was coming by, and she was like looking at her watch. Are we getting back? Are we going home today?
She's seen that happen before.
Yeah, and it was just so fun. It was fun to talk about all these things. 440 CUDA. You got to tell that story real quick.
Well, I bought I had a 67 Firebird that I used to race a lot. When I said race, we used to do the illegal racing, then also race at IRP. And
That's
and
Indianapolis Raceway Park.
Yeah, Indianapolis Raceway Park. I had a 421 in that and a 389. I had a 455 because you could buy an engine out of junkyard for $75. Bought an engine out of a Trans Am. I swear to God, put it in there, and I was blowing up motors. And then, but the car I always wanted was a 70 CUDA. All right. When I was 14 years old, they came out with them, because I'm born in 56, and so there was this Chrysler's rapid transit system in the middle of the newspaper, and it had a Challenger and it had the CUDA, and I was in love with this car. So 8 years later, I'm 20 years old, and I'm going down New York Street by a rural, and in the car lot there's a green 70 CUDA. Okay, now it's 6 years old, and it wasn't rough at all. It just was what it was. It was an older car, and I get out, and it's got 440 on the hood, and it's got factory air, and it's automatic. And I'm like, how much you want for this car? And the guy says $750. And I didn't have that money. I'm 20 years old, but I had that Firebird. So I sold my Firebird to a friend of mine for $650, and my mother gave me $100. And I went up there, and I gave this guy, I gave him $100 to hold the car. And he said, I'm only going to hold it for a day. And I went and got the money, the remaining $650, and bought that car. And then I had that car, and then I had other cars but that was my Cadillac, because they had back in those days, didn't nobody have air, back in the
Right.
70s.
Nobody.
So I'm pulling up here in this car with air on, and I roll my window down. My buddies be like, "You son of a," and so I had that car for a long time, and I had Chevy Novas, and I had all those other cars I would race, but this was my kind of like Cadillac to drive around. And I sold all those other cars, because I had to get into business, but I kept that car, and I had no idea it would be worth anything, but it was just like a keepsake for me. Yeah. And so years later, I've got the car in my garage. It's been there since I was 20. I'm 68 now, so it's 48 years, and I started taking it apart.
And he's restoring the car.
Yeah, it's
one piece at a time. You got to see this thing, and he's doing just a world-class job on it.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I am. It's taken me 2 years.
Really
I had to sandblast it. I've had to learn how to weld sheet metal. That was, thank God for YouTube. Let's say that.
Yes.
So I just kind of put it together, and it's probably about 6 months out. Brand new quarter panels, two rear quarter panels, brand new fenders. The rest of the car was pretty intact. There was just rust holes in different places where I didn't even know, because it's set in the garage and had all the chrome trim around it. Once you took all that apart, I was like, "Oh, baby, you're falling apart on me." And I was like, "What the heck happened? You've been in the garage for 30 years. How'd you get rusty like this?" And So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but it runs. I mean, I used to build motors. When I say build, I used to rebuild. I probably put 20 motors together because I was blowing them up all the time, and I found I better learn how to work on them. And so, I put that up. It's got a 520 cam and 6,500 lifters, double roll timing chain. I mean, it's nice. It doesn't have the Edelbrock. I had a Edelbrock 6-pack for a while.
Oh.
Sold it for $75.
If anybody doesn't know what
it had factory part, it had Mopar part numbers.
6 2-barrels. That's the.
Man.
Oh, geez. I mean, the stuff I used to give away. But that's the story about the CUDA. She'll be out.
But
in
I
the
didn't
spring.
give anything away. I got everything I ever bought. It's still in my garage, and
I still got the.
I gotta take a quick break.
okay.
I still got the bicycle my dad bought me when I was 12. And what's funny, somebody was in there looking at my car. I said, "Here, let me show you about how time works." Up on the rafters, that's their gold AMF, which was $49.95 at Central Hardware back in the. I don't know if you remember Central Hardware.
I don't.
It was at Shadeland and Pendleton Pike, and they had one on the west side, but it doesn't matter. It was one of the first big hardware stores, and my dad bought me that bicycle, and I still got it.
You do?
And it's hanging from the rafters, and I said, now, my dad bought me that when I was 12, and then I bought this car when I was 20. I said, 8 years go by, and I'm riding a bicycle, the Boy Scout meetings, and then 8 years later, I got a girl on my arm, and I'm riding this car.
Here's the thing. When I was a kid, my dad loved cars, loved boats, loved airplanes. And at 8 years old, everybody's getting a basketball goal or something in my neighborhood. He bought me a welder. Started out with acetylene tanks and finally switched to a stick welder. But now I'm raking the neck on my bicycle because at that time all the motorcycle movies were coming out, and I'm like, I'm going to build me a chopper bicycle. And I built one a couple of years ago. Here's the funny thing. I was driving down the street, and I look over in the trash, and there's one of those OCC 20-inch bikes. You know what I'm talking about? It's got a big fat tire in the back.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it'd be hard to get a big fat tire in that rim, but it was missing the fork. I'm driving, so I throw that in the truck. Welcome back. I throw that in the truck, and I go down about 3 more streets, and there's a chrome luggage rack lying in the. And I looked at that, and I'm like, if I raked the neck, I could use those chrome tubes and make a Springer front end and make me a true, like a true chopper bicycle out of it. And I still got that. And you ought to see it. It's as cool as it can be. But it was 2 throwaway things. And anyway.
My dad couldn't drive by anything on the side of the road. And how much time we got? I can tell you the Christmas story.
It's hard to say we're out of time. But here's what we're going to do. You know what we're going to do?
Yeah. We're
going to do this again.
Yeah.
Because this is just to whet people's appetite. The whole point is, here's the thing. If you like some of the subjects that we started covering tonight, go do that. Go ride a bike. Go build a car. You said you learned how to weld on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And nobody told you how to do.
I'm not super good at it, but my
you
welds are they're solid.
Okay, okay. That's good
solid.
Enough. That's good because you can get the grinder and kind of touch them up.
Yeah.
And I too. I wanted to draw, and I get the pencil, and I was trying to do those. You remember Ed Big Daddy Roth, all those monster cars and everything that people used to draw, those big blowers sticking up. Ed Big Daddy Roth, a Rat Fink. And anyway, I wanted desperately to draw those cars like him. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and it was never good enough. But, finally, after I drew about 10,000 wheels where I could draw that wheel real quick, now I can do that probably as well as he could have in the day. And it's a great feeling. You talked about the culmination of a 160-mile bike ride. I felt the same way because we're going to talk about art on the show at times too. When I could grab that pencil and have such a command of it anything that I thought of in my head, I could make it look like that on paper. And so I encourage people, if you got something you always want to do, start doing it.
And it reminds me of Dan. I think the next interview ought to be with Dan
down. Yeah.
because
he'd like to do it.
Yeah,
he's a person. He's from Boston or Boston area. He said, "I'm not from Boston. I'm just from outside of Boston." But he's got that Boston attitude.
Oh, that's interesting.
He tough guy. I mean, when I first met him, he's a contractor, and him and his partner, I would work for him, and he always had an attitude of I got there a little late or whatever, and he has had to mellow over the years, but got a number of respect for him, and just one of those guys that just don't back down off of nothing. You know,
That's good.
Yeah.
You know, he's a guy. You go in the bar, you got to say, "Hey, all right, it's all
Calm down.
good. It's good. It's all right. He just stepped on my foot. We're all right. You don't got to knock him out. He's that kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's just a real dude. So you know,
He
we
just-
get along good. There's certain things like honor that people should have, and you just can tell when somebody has this. I try not to. With friends I've got, I look at friends as almost like money in the bank, and you just don't want to go borrow it just any old time unless you really need it.
Well, they say friendships like bank accounts, you can't always make withdrawals. You have to balance your bank account, and if you make withdrawals, you got to make deposits. So that's what makes for right.
Yeah.
You know, so
Just that idea that we need people in our life that inspire, that push us forward to try new things and be brave and be courageous, like he has in your life. And I'm sure you have been Dan to Dan
he
as
said,
well.
He always like, yeah, Rufus, you know, and like he stopped riding for a while. He had to have neck surgery or something, and he you know, it was about 7 or 8, maybe 10 years ago. So I kept riding. And I was riding across the state even without him. So he finally got back into riding, but he had lost, you know, he wasn't conditioned.
Well, you said you're going to have to train a little harder.
Yeah, well, you know, it was funny because I always joke about it because we
You're going to
did.
keep up with me.
I had to, because normally he's in front of me. So for about 2 years or a year and a half, I was in front of him. I said, "You all right back there, Dan? You okay?" And he'd look at me and grumble, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm like, "Okay." And
Come on, Dan. Well, see,
I said, come on, you can
so-
make it up this hill, you know. And
so
of course, I was just messing with him. He'd be like, "Dude, you just don't know. When I get this, I'm gonna wear you out." But he got back there and he's up in front again, so it's all good.
Rufus,
This humility is, I think, what if I think about what it showed me when I went across the state, I think I learned a certain amount of humility.
well, you need,
And I found faith too. I think that was part of it. It's some other thing, but whatever it was, it changed me a little bit.
you know, it's not meant
Love
to
that.
train other people. It's meant to train ourselves, isn't it? The whole thing.
Yeah, that's what, you know. I look at the things that what the slogan is: "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." That's
Yeah.
a true thing. That's true. If my father, when he died, I was 17. Everybody's like, "Whoa, that's just hard on you." I said, "Well, he could have died when I was 13."
Right.
And so, if he'd have died and left me $200,000, or you know, I would have burned it up. He left me with no debt and a business I could take over, and some values. And that's worth more than anything he could have. And that struggle I had to do for the first few years, the things I had to learn how to do, and all other aspects of life, they make you who you are.
Good parents, the best lottery you'll ever win.
Yep.
You know,
Don't you think?
and you know, just to put in perspective, your dad, as you talk about him, is a little different in African American families because I think of the things that they had to deal with. Okay, and you know, we can go there, but there's a short that you can see on YouTube. Denzel Washington. It was a movie he did called Fences, and there's a passage in there where his Denzel Washington is the father, and his son is you know, dealing with this strife between him and his dad. And the son says, you know, "Can I ask you a question?" And he says, "What?" He says, "Why ain't you never liked me?" And then that's this whole tense scene of Denzel standing up. He said, "Boy, come over here," you know, and he's right up in his face. He says, "I ain't gotta like you. I gotta, you know, take care of you. It's my responsibility." He said, you know, in life, you better not be trying to look around for people to like you. You better hope they do good by you.
Yes.
Okay. And every time I watch that scene, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. And people look at me and says, is that your dad? I said, "Yeah, that's my dad." Now that man was hard, but I love that man. That man was hard.
All right. See if this rings true in your world. I wrecked a Monte Carlo that was my dad's. I said, "I'll fix it." I took it apart, took the front end apart, got new sheet metal. I thought, I'm not going to try to repair all that. I couldn't do it well enough. But I painted the whole car. It was like a midnight blue, and I swear there was a speck in the hood, like a piece of sand. You know, I did it outside, and I tried to.
That's not
But
good.
I sprayed it, and I got it together, and he immediately walks out, goes right up to the speck, and he points at it, and he's like scratching it. And he's like, "Well, you're not going to leave that, are you? I mean, like that? I mean, are you going to leave that like that?" And I'm like, "No, I'm going to sand that hood down because once I stand that, I got to paint the whole hood.
Yeah, you got to do it over again.
Paint the hood. So I took the hood off and I painted it, but that wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to me. I mean, he could have said, you tried so hard, little Bryan. He's like, maybe I'll do that a little better. And so now I can do that a little better. And I pushed myself to do it a little better. And did you find that true in your life? Did you?
Oh yeah, I was trying to load the bayliner on the boat trailer, and I missed the trailer and rolled back, and the piling ripped the VHF radio off. And my dad's like, "Well, you can buy another one."
Yeah,
I was in high school.
Just remind me.
I guess I'm buying another VHF.
Just remind me if I get the boat in the
Antenna.
water. I don't want you to put it on the trailer. That's the lesson I've
They
learned
call
today.
it, they say tough love, but you know what? It's just love. That's all it is. And dads in from that genre had just a different kind of. They weren't domesticated, so to speak. You know, they were all about. Some of them were war veterans, whatever they were. They were just like, hey, you know what? I'm preparing you for the future, and everybody ain't gonna be nice to you. So I'm not. You know, but you can bet one thing: I love you. They don't. So if I'm beating you, it's because I love you.
Yeah.
That's my dad. Now I ain't saying your dad's, but I'm saying my dad was like, I'm beating you because I love you.
Oh no,
He
I
didn't
knew what
say
a-
that, but
I
I
knew
know
what a
that's what he
switch
meant.
was in my home. Yeah, it was like go pick your own stick because.
Well, I could outrun my dad. In fact, I took off one time. He was trying to chase me, and I ran around and did about 3 laps and then hid behind a tree. And as he ran by with the switch, trying to get me,
Yeah.
I let him run on by, and then I whistled at him.
See,
That did not go.
that would
did not go over
I
well.
wouldn't
Bad-
be
I
here
wouldn't.
bad
today.
decision.
I wouldn't recommend it. Okay,
I
but
wouldn't be here today if that ever happened. I just wouldn't be here.
You just wouldn't be here.
There wouldn't have been
Rufus
nothing
would
left to me.
yeah. Well, Rufus, it's a pleasure to have you. As we got so many things to talk about, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I enjoy talking about life and politics and what means most in life, and your sons are important in your life, and I'm sure they look up to everything that you're doing, and you're still doing it. That to me it's so great to do all
I
this.
told him, I said, I knew my dad died when I was 17, so I said, it's amazing what he teaches you, because I knew how to be a father all the way up to when they turned 17 and 18. And I said, I don't know how to be a father after 18 because I didn't have him. So I said, you guys are going to have to help me with that. Of course, they're looking at me like you're crazy. But it's been a different thing. But I've been all right. I mean, so now you go to the bar. I never went to the bar with my dad. So I'm sitting there drinking. They're legal age. And I'm like, this is weird.
Well, it's my observation to you. Here's how you were successful doing that. Rather than you trying to think, well, 17, you would just reduce your activities to a 17-year-old and hang out with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll just all be 17 for the rest of our lives. I said, socially, I felt like I climbed hard to get up to about 17, and I've been 17 pretty much.
I don't
They
think
said,
you
when you
should
going to
ever- I
grow up?
used to always
When you
be-
going to grow up, Peter Pan? I'm like, I don't want to grow up.
I think I've always reflected on that. I don't think I thought of myself as being youthful, but I never thought I always felt, when I looked in the mirror, I was always surprised. I looked at somebody older. I was like, really? Or no, and it's not even the mirror. I think you get used to that. But if I ever saw video of myself,
know.
I'm like, wow.
Age is a brutal thing.
Ooh, that's
It
an
is.
old guy running. But I don't feel that guy. I'm like, I don't think of myself reflectively as that guy that I just saw in the video. I said, that's not me.
And see, the thing that you sent me a video on your way over here, and you said, check us out, because you and I both play
I'm
music
sorry,
together.
man. That
But
was-
but it's good. Oh, I really like it. I really liked it. And you haven't seen it. I'm going to show it to you.
Nah,
But
okay.
but he's playing the guitar and singing. So we'll break away and put that on the show, and we'll end with you playing that guitar, because it's kind of a haunting little song. I like it. I like it a lot.
I played a little bit when I was like 17 or so, maybe till about 19, maybe, off and on, a little acoustic, but never really very good. And I'm still not good now. But I went to go see my son in New York, and he had a guitar, and I picked it up. He had a brand new guitar, and I was like, this is pretty neat. It has a tuner on it and everything.
Yeah.
I didn't even an electronic tuner. I don't know if they got them on there. Where you can press a button and
No.
it like boom, boom, E and D and all that. And then I was like, this is pretty
didn't know
neat.
that.
So I started kind of messing around with it. And then, Dad, you used to play guitar, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, I was never very good. But I'm sitting there messing around with it. And somehow the bug hit me. And that's about 3 years ago. And then I, kind of messed around with old guitar. I had an old one, and I played it a little bit. And then I started playing a little bit more. And for about a year and a half now, I've been at it, which lets me know. And what happens is when I record myself, in fact, the first time I recorded myself, I stopped playing for 2 months. It was so bad.
Oh, okay.
I just like, because
And
I
then
thought.
Dan said, I'm starting to play the guitar. And I'm like, okay, I'll pick it back up, Dan.
Yeah, Dan plays the bass. He
See what I...
Yeah.
And I ain't even told. I'm not even want to play with Dan because
I'm
he would be instructional. He's like, here's what you got to do. You're missing this, then your timing's off. He'd start working on me, and I'm like, I don't want to be fixed.
Well, Dan knows. Dan does a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's an all tools guy. Oh, he used to build houses. I mean, really high end stuff. I mean, really, he's a perfectionist. He's crazy. Like I said,
that's good.
Sometimes I'm looking around. I said, he's not around. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna put this in there like that, because he.
I'm gonna hurry, huh?
Yeah, but he's just a good guy. But I started playing the guitar, and I sent you that little bit there. And you know what's funny?
We're gonna close the show with you playing that song because I really liked it. And so,
but
Cameron,
year from now, I will really be able to play that well. Right now, it's just it'll be a good comparison because a year from now,
he can sit in with us sometime.
Well, I mean, Cameron's got his work cut out for him because he's got to find. Your dog was Clyde.
Yeah,
Clyde.
Yeah, got to find a picture of Clyde. And a video of you playing guitar.
There you go. All right.
Jesus Christ.
So get those to us. I wish we could stay forever. We can't tonight.
I know.
No,
That sucks.
I'll get back on the road. I hope the weather's let up because there was a couple of times on the highway. I'm like, oh my goodness.
So just
It was snowing.
Just steering to the turn, man. Steering to the skid, right?
Did it the
Controlled
other morning.
skid.
Okay, try to remember that when it's a
Come back. Come back.
Get out of my way.
Come back. It's a pleasure,
All
my
right.
friend. My friend.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. It's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, thank you for
As
having me.
always.
Thank you for having me. So
Come back. Come back.
off the air.